Coming every Tuesday night in February at 7 p.m. on Facebook Live, it's the Bible is Black History Institute. This year's theme is Great Women of the Bible, Black women who shaped our biblical faith. We will study Eve, Deborah, Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, along with Vashti, Esther, and Lydia. We will study from Dr. Theron Williams' latest book, Great Women of the Bible, Contemporary Conversations. To order your copy and for more information about the Bible is Black History Institute 2021, visit our website, BibleIsBlackHistory.com. We welcome you to the Bible is Black History Institute, and now founder and president, Dr. Theron D. Williams.
God bless you. We thank you so much for being a part of the Bible is Black History Institute 2021. This is our third annual. We wanted to come to you live, but as a result of COVID, we have to stream the Institute 2021 this year. Our theme is Great Women of the Bible. And it is based upon my latest book, Great Women of the Bible, Contemporary Conversations, where we are looking at 7 of the outstanding women of the Bible. And of course, these are women of color. And if you missed last week, you really missed a blessing. And you can go to our website, BibleIsBlackHistory.com. We have it posted. You can go to that website, you can open it, and you can check out what took place on last week. This week, we are looking at Queen Esther, who was one of the outstanding personalities of the Bible. Queen Esther, a tremendous woman of God. It is Queen Esther who literally saved her people from extermination. She saved the Hebrew people from being wiped out in Persia. And she used her influence to be a blessing to her people. And so that's what we're going to be looking at tonight, how this great woman of God used her influence for the glory of God and for the edification of her people. And this conversation is going to be led tonight by Giselle Driver. Giselle is a longtime member of the Mount Carmel Church. She is a tremendous woman of God. She is a voracious reader, and she is just an intellectual. So I want y'all to lean forward, and be blessed by the conversation.
Hello. Hi, everybody. This is the Native Son Book Club discussion that we will have on Queen Esther, which is a woman that is featured in the book Great Women of the Bible, written by Pastor Theron D. Williams. I will give a brief overview of the story of Queen Esther, and then we'll get into the discussion. But first, I want to have everyone present to introduce themselves, just a brief introduction of your name and anything you'd like to share. And I'll start that by saying I am Giselle Driver, member of Mount Carmel Church for my entire life, and a proud member of the Native Son Book Club. So anybody else, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Theron, and I'm a member of Carmel Church and the Native Son Book Club.
Larry Smoot, present. And of course, I'm one of the original members of the Native Son Book Club, going 20 years strong. Proud of that. Thank you.
I'm Phyllis Kendall. I am one of the newer members of the Native Son Book Club and a proud member of Eastern Star Church.
Hey, I'm Mike Driver, member of Mount Carmel Baptist Church, and I'm the president of Native Son. Started in about 2000 or 2001.
All right, thank you, everybody. So I will read the recap of the story of Queen Esther, and then afterwards, we'll get into discussion and the reflection questions. King Ahasuerus was king of the Persian Empire. His previous queen was Queen Vashti, whom he deposed after she disobeyed him by refusing to be shown off in front of his friends. The king sought a replacement queen and sent his aides on a massive search throughout all the Persian Empire for young prospects. These young ladies were collected and brought before the king for him to make his choice. Among the selected ladies was Esther, a very beautiful Jewish young lady who was being raised by her older cousin Mordecai. King Ahasuerus was enamored by Esther's beauty and loved her more than any of the other young women. So much so that he made her his queen. At the direction of Mordecai, Queen Esther did not reveal to the king that she was a Jewish worshiper of Yahweh. Mordecai was given a position in the palace guarding the gates of the fortress. He checked on Queen Esther's welfare daily and also kept her informed of the plight of the Jewish community. One night, Mordecai overheard guards who were angry with the king plotting to kill him. Mordecai relayed this information to Queen Esther, who then relayed it to the king, allowing the king to avert the assassination attempt and have the guards put to death. Sometime later, King Ahasuerus promoted a man named Haman over all the noblemen, making him the second most powerful official in the empire. The king ordered all officials to bow down to Haman to show respect whenever he passed by, but Mordecai refused to do so because he too was a Jewish worshiper of Yahweh. Haman was livid about this and sought permission from the king to not only kill Mordecai, but to also kill all the Jews throughout the empire as they worshiped the same God. The king granted Haman's request, and a letter went out stating that all Jews would be killed the following year and all their property would go to the person or persons who killed them. When Mordecai learned of this plan, he sent word to Queen Esther, asking her to use her influence with the king to stay this execution. Queen Esther was reluctant and not willing to approach the king without being summoned, as that was against the rules and punishable by death. Mordecai sent word a second time to Queen Esther, this time warning her that her position as queen did not guarantee that she would not also be executed, as she too was a Jew. He urged her to consider that God may have elevated her so that she could be in the position to save her people. This persuaded Queen Esther to go before the king. The king welcomed her and offered her half of his kingdom. Queen Esther refused this offer, but requested the king and Haman to attend a banquet that she would prepare. During the banquet, the king asked Queen Esther what her request was and again offered her half of his kingdom. She requested that he and Haman attend a second banquet and promised to reveal her request during that time. When Haman left the first banquet, he passed by Mordecai, who still refused to bow, which infuriated Haman even more. He had his men construct a 75-foot tall pole with a sharp point end on which he planned to impale Mordecai. His plan was to seek permission from the king to kill Mordecai the next night. However, during the night, the king was read the book of history of his reign and heard the account of how Mordecai saved his life by exposing the assassination plot of the two guards. The king realized that he never honored Mordecai for saving his life. The next morning, when Haman came to the king to ask permission to kill Mordecai, the king asked his opinion on how to honor a man who pleased the king. Haman, thinking that the king was talking about him, told the king that the man should be honored by being given the king's royal robes and led through the city square on the king's horse. The king then ordered Haman to take his royal robes and horse and do what he had just suggested for Mordecai. At the second feast the next evening, Queen Esther finally revealed her request, which was for the king to spare her life and the lives of her people. The king didn't quite understand, so she further explained that she indeed was a Jew and that Haman wanted to kill her and her people. The king was infuriated by this revelation and ordered Haman put to death. Haman was then impaled on the very pole that he had constructed for Mordecai. The king then gave all of Haman's property to Queen Esther, who in turn gave it to Mordecai. The king also gave Mordecai the position that Haman had once held. Queen Esther also asked the king to overturn his executive order to annihilate the Jews. The king explained that once he put a decree in writing, it can never be overturned. He did, however, give the Jews permission to defend themselves and provided the weapons. The Jews ultimately prevailed and God's people were delivered because Queen Esther was courageous enough to make a difference. So that is the recap of the story of Queen Esther as told in this book. Anybody have any comments?
I thought it was interesting that there's no direct mention of divine intervention in this book. But if you look over the story, you can see how God's hand was in motion, even from when Queen Vashti, if I say it correctly, was deposed, and how Esther was used, Mordecai was used, how the king was used, and even how Haman was used. So you can, when you look back over the story, you can see how the Lord was working, but there's no real indication of like divine intervention as things were happening. But one thing I was really curious is, did Esther really want to be queen? I couldn't gather if she really wanted to at first, or if she just got kind of pushed into that role.
My take is more along the lines, and you mentioned how divine intervention wasn't present. I think that's where we get into the contemporary conversation part of it. You don't necessarily see God, but God is there. And to your question, I was a little troubled by the great woman persona of Queen Esther, in the sense that, in contemporary terms, we think of a strong woman as someone who is well educated, well versed on many things, as opposed to someone who got her status simply because she was a beautiful virgin that other men chose for the king. And then the king, in turn, was smitten by her, not necessarily smitten by all the aspects of a great woman, but the fact that he was smitten by her visually. And also, she seemed to be timid. She played the role. She was like, I don't go see the king unless I'm summoned. It took Mordecai pushing her. Again, that divine intervention from that fatherly figure that Mordecai was for her, even though it was a cousin, that she did do that. So, just little. That's just my take.
I found it interesting because, I was looking at, okay, so why was the fact that Vashti, however you pronounce it, she refused to go, so I was like, okay, let me read the Bible and see what the Bible says. And I got the background, and Vashti was strong. She was like, you've been drinking for 7 days, and you want me to come out there? A person that, like Smoot, you were talking about what a strong woman is.
Right, exactly.
That was interesting how, she was like, you want to parade me around and y'all drunk? Are you kidding me? And so she was like, no. So I thought that was interesting that because the reason why she refused um, was her demise. You know, it's in his eyes. I don't see what happened to her, but I just thought that was
The king got rid of the strong woman that stood her ground,
Exactly.
and then went and got, this young version who would just do whatever he said. And she was afraid, Queen Esther was afraid at first anyway, to put her life on the line, to risk her life. But apparently Queen Vashti wasn't afraid. So I think it's interesting that the king was like, okay, we're gonna get rid of the one that talks back and then go get, one that's a little more submissive. I thought that was interesting.
I did comment about Queen Esther when you were talking about her timidness and her reluctance to go see the king. I just thought that what was expected of women back in that. So
Right.
I just looked at him as one queen, a submissive type queen that was the other woman, of that era.
Agreed.
but and then but then God used her, gave her the strength to stand up. So she did stand up, whether it was accidental or for fear of her own life, like that of Mordecai. She did summon up the strength to stand up and say, "Hey, this is wrong. This is what it is. I'm who I am, and these are my people."
But didn't you also think it was interesting that this timid virgin learned how to play palace politics? So, she didn't just go in there and immediately say, please, spare my people. She played the king and, got him in the palm of her hand so that she could ask for the safety of her people.
When we were talking about Queen Esther, when she first got paraded in front of the king, did she have a choice? Did she want to be king? My guess is she didn't have a choice. I mean, what is everybody's opinion? I mean, you have a choice. Could she? Oh, I don't want to be the queen.
Yeah, I didn't get the impression that there was a choice given. They gathered up all of these women and paraded them in front of the queen, and he chose the one that he wanted. I didn't get the impression that there was a choice.
But she could have hidden herself or, disguised herself. She could have done possibly things to prevent herself from being picked. That's why I was just curious if she wanted to be part of that.
I wouldn't say that she had a choice, but I guess maybe I would think that was, if you are chosen, that is a position that you should be honored to be chosen. Maybe that's not maybe a woman can tell me whether or not that would be the case in this instance. I would think it would have been a potentially a good thing as opposed to a bad thing, unless you use it as like a slave or something like that.
But you reminded me of something. The fact that she listened to the king's eunuch, and he gave her advice on how to present herself before she went before the king, made me think that she wanted to be favored. But at the beginning, I kind of got the impression that she maybe didn't want to be picked to be in that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Phyllis. I went back and read the story in the Bible as well that was more detailed, and yeah, they gave her the perfume and the makeup and everything to be presented, and she may have wanted this opportunity. She was such a young girl, though. I could see the fear of having such responsibility.
Did anybody think it was kind of strange how much hatred Haman had for not just Mordecai, but for all the Jewish people? To want to destroy all the Jewish people seems a little, over the top for just the slight that was shown to him by Mordecai. I realized that he was from a tribe that was enemies of the Jews, but don't you think that was a little excessive? Or
To Phyllis, when you talk about Haman, I think the book mentioned the king called him, or the I guess the pastor said he's an insolent man, right? And I was like, what is insolent? And I was thinking indolent or something like that, but insolent meaning an arrogant person. I actually had to look it up. It's like, oh, okay. So his hatred, given that you're an arrogant guy and you feel that you need to deserve to be bowed to because you are only under the king, and to have somebody else not want to bow to you, and then not want to bow to you, even all your people will present themselves the same way. Those people don't need. I think that's one of those privileged things that maybe we can't understand as much as someone in a position of privilege to think that they are better and don't have a problem looking down on other people. That's my take.
So you think that just because Mordecai was Jewish and didn't bow down, he knew that no other Jews would bow down, and so
I think the book even said that.
Yeah, and the book says it and the Bible says it as well. Yeah, he appeared to just be an arrogant man. I classify him as a hater, and he wanted, he was so arrogant that when he was speaking to the king, when the king asked the question, how do I honor a man? He just assumed that it was him in his arrogance, So yeah, I just think that Haman was the classic hater. And then Cheryl, as far as the Jews, I too don't understand what the issue is in present day. In the biblical days, they would not bow; they would only worship God, and they were hated and persecuted for that for centuries. And it's hard to comprehend that and understand it, but that's what was going on then. And I don't know how to explain today's hatred of the Jews and the Black people and anybody else other than arrogance and privilege and a sense of entitlement.
I'm just curious, but in the biblical times, a lot of their persecution was based on the fact that they turned away from God and he punished them. Or am I not understanding that correctly? That's my understanding. A lot of persecution for the Jews was based on that they worshipped idols and kind of turned away from God, and as part of their punishment, he let them be slaves to other countries. Isn't that kind of the reason why they were in Persia in the first place?
I know my take is quite the opposite. I think the Bible often speaks about a government who was idol worshipers and king worshipers, and even Jesus, like, no, I don't bow down to King Herod or whomever may be out there. I only bow down to God. I thought Jews were more in the line of worshipers of Yahweh as opposed to the statues or the kings or making kings themselves in a godlike position. So they were persecuted for that reason, is my understanding, but I could be incorrect.
That's what I was thinking too, Smooth. That they, we always look at me and my house. We would serve the Lord. So that's what I thought too. I know, when Moses was getting the 10 Commandments from God, they were talked into worshiping idols, and God didn't like that. But there was a group that said, no, we're not going to worship idols. So they were looked down on.
Well, maybe that's where my confusion is, because when I did my research, I found that the Israelites were dispersed as part of that 7 years of the Babylonian exile that they had for their persistent wickedness. So maybe there's an actual difference between Israelites and Jewish people, and maybe that's what the difference is. One last thing, and then I'll be quiet for a while.
You're good.
Does anybody have a really good idea why Mordecai told Esther not to mention that she was Jewish during this process of her becoming queen and even after she became queen?
Well, maybe maybe he feared for, like, the Bible that I have has a note at the bottom that, because I had this, that was throwing me too, and he said that it was possibly because he feared for his position and feared for her life. I guess, and it was known that Haman hated the Jews, and there was always hatred for the Jewish people. So I was thinking, okay, so if she had revealed that she was Jewish in the beginning, she never would have become queen.
And that ties back to my earlier comment, is like, did she want to be queen? There was ways that she could have avoided that.
Yeah.
So that's why I was curious if she really wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I found, because I did other research as well, and found the same thing that you said, Cheryl, that the Jews were treated so badly. So Mordecai, didn't want her to reveal her status, just, basically for her safety. But to what you said, Phyllis, yeah, that's a good question of whether or not she really wanted to do it. Mordecai, her cousin, was such a big influence in her life. So, maybe she just trusted him or went along with his suggestion, and believed that, he would protect her, because he did check on her daily, to make sure she was being treated good. So maybe he might have talked her into it, that little nudge,
But then when you say that the Jews were treated badly, Mordecai was in a position of some power in the Persian government. So I didn't get the, and a lot of Jews, when they were able to leave, they stayed there because they had some power, they had some wealth, they had, made a home there. So,
but had Mordecai, was he powerful before the king appointed him?
Yeah, he had a position in the Persian government before he got a position in the palace. So,
okay, but his
I didn't catch that.
His nationality was never revealed prior to that, was it?
I think he made a big deal. There's a big deal in the Bible about him always saying that he was a Jew. So I don't think it was never a secret. So,
well, and another look at that, though, Mordecai was a man. Esther was a woman, and women were treated differently.
One thing I think is important, and part of my distinction between the book and what goes on here is the concept of Jewish being an ethnicity. To me, Jewish is like being a black person who can pass as white. So you don't necessarily, you can't look at a Jewish person and say, oh, you're a Jew, where you can say, oh, you are a black person. And so when you say, why keep that to yourself? Because it's more of a religion thing as opposed to a visual perception. And so that's why, because kings are used to being idolized, you don't want to go up and say, I don't idolize you. You can be my husband, but you're not going to be my God, that type of thing. So those are the type of things you may want to keep to yourself. And it's not a situation where you can say, oh, you black, you ain't good enough for me. You can be like, oh, wait a minute. Now I'm smitten by you. Now you can, maybe I don't want to kill Jews, that type of thing. So,
well, and that goes back to what you just said, that when Pastor talks about in the original book he wrote, that the Jewish people of the Bible were black, and the Jewish people in modern history were the European Jews, which look white. So
you're thinking that the king, because is it not reasonable to assume that the visual perception of Esther was likening to the same as what he is, as opposed to saying as a black and white. So you're saying he saw that she was a Jew because she was of a darker hue.
No.
No,
Okay,
they
okay.
didn't know she was Jewish because she looked like him.
Right, exactly. Okay, right.
Yeah, because she was dark. Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Well, I will read the questions and you guys just chime in. So the first one says, why were the Israelites in Persia? And I'll just say that my answer for that is because they were Babylonian captives until Cyrus freed them, King Cyrus, and then King Cyrus allowed them to return or to stay in Persia to rebuild and settle and live a normal life if they chose to do so.
Nope, I totally had the same answer as part of that 70-year Babylonian exile. Is the reason that they were there.
Why do you think Mordecai counseled Esther not to reveal her Jewish identity after she was chosen to be the king's harem?
Well, like I said before, I went to the Bible, and that's where I got my answer about that he feared for possibly his position and her life. That's why he was checking up on her, making sure she was okay.
Okay, so I did some research and I got some conflicting answers and I thought it was really interesting. I saw one idea that he didn't want it to be revealed that she was from royalty because she was a descendant of King Saul, and figured that that would be actually a way to cause her to become queen. And then there's that other opinion that he feared that she wouldn't receive a fair opportunity to become queen if it was known that she was Jewish. So, that's it kind of brought that question, like, did they want her to become queen or not?
Mordecai didn't intervene prior to her being queen. It was like after she was queen. So it wasn't like he said, be Gentile like in your pursuit. It was more along the lines of after you are queen, by the way, don't mention that you're a Jew, that type of thing. So again, the Jewish, that's why I said the Jewish thing is like, you are like me, not different from me in appearance. You may worship differently, but you at least qualify visually as someone who is of the same cloak as I am.
I had a question for the group because talking about the question said, why did Mordecai not to reveal her after she was chosen to be in the king's harem? Now, being a part of the king's harem, does he have more than one queen, or was this something prior to her being chosen as a queen?
This was prior to being chosen as queen, and then later it said after she became queen, he told her again not to reveal that she was Jewish.
But I caught that all as well, Mike, because I was a little confused about the concept of being a queen in a harem, and I just took a step back when the guys went out to go find all these young virgin women. That collection is the harem, although the king chose Esther specifically from that. So that that kind of like to Phyllis's point, like, do you really want to be part of a harem? But I don't know about being part of a harem, but I'll be queen, that type of thing. So if it's a beauty contest, or if it's whatever to become that, if it's a bachelorette or whatever the thing is, I'll do it to become the wife, but not necessarily part of your stable.
Okay, yeah. Now, because my answer was basically like everybody else, reasons, and in my opinion, also then when she was part of the harem, it was soon, and just thinking how she had to get to the point where she was the queen, and the king started having feelings for her, part of Mordecai's plan to figure out, hey, we might need this later on in whatever situation we come across.
Okay, so we'll go on to question number 3. Why did Haman want to exterminate the Jews, and why do you think the king gave him permission? And we've said it all again. My reason is because he was a hater, but what I wrote down was, because Mordecai refused to bow down to him and only worship God, Haman felt disrespected. And so he decided that it was not enough to just kill Mordecai, but all Jews because they worship God. And Haman actually told the king that the Jews were separating themselves from everybody else, and telling the king that they refused to obey the laws of the king. And then he also offered the king 10,000 sacks of silver. So for the permission. So I think, that was why the king ended up allowing it to happen.
I found that the king was I don't want to say a weak-willed man, but easily influenced. I mean, you can go back to the disposition of his first queen. He let somebody else decide how to handle the situation when she refused to show up to the banquet. He let someone else decide how he would choose his next queen. And so he was easily influenced and persuaded. I mean, for him to just hand over his ring and tell Hammond to go ahead and make that order, he didn't really care about governing people. He was just there to have a good time.
Yeah, Phyllis, like you said, he was easily influenced. And then when he calmed down and wasn't drunk anymore, he wanted Vashti back, but he had already signed the decree. So he said, it was too late and he couldn't undo it.
And that shows that he kind of follows the letter of the law. Like, I made this decree, so I can't take it back. Now, if you tell me that there's going to be some people who won't bow down to me, as you've already decreed that they should, then maybe they should die, because not having any character himself, he's just like, okay, well, if I said it, that's what it's supposed to do. I don't even have enough character to say I made the wrong decision, so I can reverse that decision. Like, nope, too late. I've already signed it into law, so it's got to be done. So it just, it's kind of weak, like you said.
From reading the story, how would you describe Haman? Which we've kind of covered that, but
Right.
Like Larry said, I just went off the description of insolent and looked it up, and it says boldly rude, arrogant, and showing lack of respect. So I mean, that itself told you what type of person he was. I had a totally off the top of my head, I had a Napoleon complex. He may not have been short, but he just seemed like a person. He just seemed like black confidence, look down on everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of the advice that Mordecai gave to Queen Esther when she was reluctant to go before the king to persuade him to order a stay of execution of the Jewish people?
I think that's timeless advice. I mean, that applies even to modern times. If you're ever in a position and you think that you're going to be safe because of the level or position you're in, it's something that's going to happen to, your ethnic group or whatever, then you're sadly mistaken.
And I agree about that. And I said that, sometimes we need to tell people what they need to hear as opposed to what they want to hear. I'm sure it was a hard pill for her to swallow. But she needed to be reminded that, hey, you a queen, but you still a black girl who worships God. That's how they're going to see you when it comes, down to it. They're not going to look at your status, or they may not. It probably won't save you. I thought that was pretty good advice.
I think we've said it. I think that's one of those obvious things to me. Like, you got to choose your faith over your imminent demise. Like, okay, if I'm more worried about God's judgment, then I need to do what's right.
Yeah, and I think that the next question we've kind of already talked about in this context, but why was Queen Esther reluctant to go before the king? And we've said that it was really against the rules of the time, and it could be punishable by death. So I could understand her reluctance initially.
Do you think she was a little out of touch with what was going on? I mean, she wasn't aware that this edict had been signed about the destruction of the Jewish folks, and because she didn't understand why Mordecai was, wailing and the tearing of his clothes and why he was, really upset. So I think she was kind of a little out of touch with everything that was going on at first.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Again, I keep in mind, that she was young, and naive, I would assume. But yeah, I definitely think she was a little out of touch. And then again, just afraid to stand her ground initially.
I
Yeah,
don't know
because
if
someone else told Esther about the edict. She didn't know.
right. I don't know if it's out of touch, other than the role that she played, because even before going to the king, before being summoned, she said she hadn't seen him for 30 days. So it's not like she's, there, it's not like a normal day situation where, you interact with your significant other on a daily basis.
And Mordecai, he was high up enough where he knew
Hmm.
what was going on and relayed the message to Esther so that she would find out.
Okay, so how did Queen Esther end up showing her strength as queen?
Like Phyllis did, she played the game, right? She played the game.
Yeah, she did. And I say that, she put her faith in God. And, after she ordered, you go back and read in the Bible, she ordered her people to fast for 3 days. And we just assume that along with fasting, there was a lot of prayer. And then she decided to choose God over the law and approach the king and make her request known. But I think that she showed strength by putting her faith in God.
And I think when she put her faith in God and gathered her people together, she gave them hope and purpose. Because if you go back and read when they first heard the decree, they were all afraid, they were crying, they didn't know how to move forward. And she kind of gave them a way forward, let's do this and then I'll do that, and just, I think, calmed everybody down. So I think that was a form of strength and leadership.
Okay, and so then the last question is saying, how are you using your status or your position or opportunity in the community to exclusively benefit Black people? That was a difficult one for me, but because I don't know I don't know that I'm necessarily using my influence in the community, but just recently here at work, particularly after the George Floyd assassination on TV, I started advocating at work in my office anyway for some talk, some discussion about racial injustice, and you know we needed to get together and talk about this situation, because that was, there were other situations that bothered me, of course, but that one, I just didn't feel appropriate to act like it didn't happen. And so within my office anyway, I went to our chief and was like, hey, we need to start discussing this. I don't know if training is necessary or whatever, but I just don't want to act like this didn't happen and that racial injustice does not exist. And so we'll see where that leads, but that is one thing that I've done recently, but not necessarily in my community, but at work.
But your job is part of your community, so that you did good. I'm still struggling. I was just thinking about it the other day, and I was like, okay, so I'm on the board for our initiative for EATS, and how am I promoting it? And I think I need to reevaluate my position and what I need to do, because I feel like I'm not really contributing that I'm supposed to. So I'm in a reevaluation stage right now.
I work in HR as far as our Indianapolis location. So it's my job to recruit folks. Hey, you're black, your application goes on the front, goes on the top. I'm calling you, I'm recruiting you, I'm letting you know how our company works. I'm telling you all the good information, the right information to say, and I'm giving you an overview of our company so you know how to act and you know what to expect when you get here. And I also tell them me hiring you is a reflection of me, and I will not hesitate to fire you if you're not doing the right thing. So as far as my concern, I'm trying to get brothers jobs if they want them, good paying jobs.
Well, that's awesome, actually.
I think the key is just be able to lead by example. I'm a supervisor of people, so people look to me. So my example is always to be professional. They never hear me curse, even in a cursing environment. So leading by example and being patient. And I think it's important to be patient because in the light of all the Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives and All Lives Matter, January 6th happens and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, now it's smack dab in your face. Like you got people who are acting like you said we were acting like, but there's something different. And you hear the, and I don't want to get off track there, but leading by example is the key.
What do you think of Mordecai and Queen Esther's relationship?
He played that fatherly figure or parental role for her. And he, and I'm gonna say his fatherly figure because it's, even the guidance on how to be a Jewish woman, what you need to do in this role. So I thought he was just fatherly figure.
Yeah, he was her guardian, so he was a father figure as well as a brother figure, big cousin. I think that number two kind of goes along with number one, which was what
Right.
kind of mentor do you think he was for her? If you have anything additionally to add, you can, or if you think it's already been covered, we can go to the next one.
Well, actually, I did for number two. When they said what kind of mentor, it kind of threw me. So I just looked up mentor, and there were like 5 different types of mentors, and a lot of them are based off of career. Like the first one is master of craft, so that's a mentor that you deal with depending on whatever your profession is. One says champion of your cause. The other one says the capilot. There's also one that says the anchor. There's the reverse mentor. And then just looking at a family member who helps you keep sight of your value and find a work life. So I'm thinking as far as a kind mentor, he's that anchor type.
Okay, what do you think of the advice that he gave Esther? Do you think his advice put her life at risk? And do you think that the advice he gave her reflected selfishness on Mordecai's behalf?
I think there's a bit of I don't know, selfishness, but self-preservation. But in the end, it turns more into, again, that Jewish direction as to, God put you in this position. Don't discount that. And then she was able to find her way. So it wasn't like he specifically told her how to go about it. So he just let her know that she is empowered. And you may not even realize it, that you're empowered. And then she figured out what she was going to do.
Okay, yeah, I didn't necessarily look at it as selfishness either. I think that it was more for her to realize her potential and who she was and
Right.
maybe the calling that was placed on her life. Okay, so Esther was bold to follow Mordecai's instructions. Why do you think that she trusted him so much?
I think it comes back to her upbringing. So I had been several past experiences where he gave advice, helped her out to where there was an established trust there. So she never felt that would have said would put her at risk.
And I would agree. I think it's just, the role that he plays in her life. She recognizes that, and so there's history there. It wasn't like he was asking her to do something that she wasn't well groomed for.
Okay, so guys, is there a female that you mentor? And if so, how so?
I know that I have one friend that uses, or in the past has used me to give her daughters some fatherly type advice.
Mentor, I don't think in my case, not really, but I mean, I have a close friend that I've known 20 plus years. She calls me. We talk about different issues that she's having. I've given her advice in the past, and we've been friends so long. She trusts me. So is that a mentor? Perhaps. I mean, just like when Larry was talking about his position as a supervisor, where he just kind of plays the part. I kind of play that part for her. She kind of looks at me as an example, and evidently that example is somewhat positive.
And I would like to add that my big brother is a mentor for me, whether he knows it or not. So, okay, do you think that Mordecai respected Queen Esther? If so, how? And if not, why?
I think so. I think he has obviously love for Queen Esther being the one who raised her, but he also fashioned her to be someone who can take her upbringing to a leadership role as a queen, and he understood the role that she played even before she did. So he's like, hey, by the way, you are a queen. You are in a position of power, and you can make a difference. And you can see how that played out.
Okay, so the final question, have you developed such a close relationship with a woman to whom you provided leadership that she would follow your advice even if it put her at great risk? And how does one build that type of relationship? And if not, why?
Well, I'll answer. Oh. I mean, and I point life is going to be a woman that I provided advice to that, and she would basically lay her life on the line. That would have to be a wife, and then even after that, she would have to be married for 20 plus years to where she figured that I was worth it, and that advice would kill her.
I can't say that I have, but we also have to understand that, did it say life at risk or put some just in risk in general? Put her at great risk. Like, so someone may say, well, great risk may be, I got all my money in the bank. Should I put it in the stock market, or how should I invest my money? To me, that could be great risk, right? So. But I would tell you that the only person that I would have done that to that extent may have been my daughter. I got two daughters. So, it's like, Diana, you make good money, or you saving good money. If it was here, it can grow, and you can enjoy watching and plan on, here's how you can do something that I didn't do. You don't have to work for the next 30 years and then retire. Here, if you do this and put money here, you can retire in 20 years, or, just financial advice like that.
Well, okay, panel, we have gotten through all of our reflection questions. Do you have any other general observations or anything else that you want to say before we end this meeting?
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to participate in this. It helped me to study the book of Esther. You've read the story. You think you know everything, and those reflection questions encouraged me to do more research, and I actually enjoyed my time doing that additional research. So whether or not it was meant to go outside of the book or not, it did for me, and it was helpful for me. So.
Okay, people. Well, listen, I appreciate each of you for, deciding to go on this journey with me. It a lot deeper than the other book club meetings that we've had in a spiritual level. But I appreciate your time and your input in this. And we will go ahead and end this meeting now. And thank you all.
Take care, everybody.
All right.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us for this contemporary conversation about Queen Esther, one of the great women of the Bible. Tune in next Tuesday at 7 p.m. as the Bible is Black History Institute 2021 continues our conversation with Mary Magdalene. God bless and have a blessed week.